Oh my Goblin Giant Clash Royale, nerf 3 Musketeers and freeze already. So what you're saying is you'd like 3 Musketeers and freeze to be nerfed in the next set of balance changes, right? Yes! Please! Pull a Royal Recruits and do an emergency nerf if you have to. So if we nerf 3 Musketeers and freeze, you'll be happy, right? Yes! Just do it already! What the fireball is wrong with you? Why didn't you nerf Barbarian Barrel or Mortar? That's it. I'm quitting Clash Royale forever. Now, it's all in good humor, guys. I totally get where you're coming from. Mortar decks are definitely really strong right now, and personally, I think that's just because Mortar bait is really strong, so I don't think that answering, the question would be to necessarily nerf Mortar. I think that nerfing those other cards around it would be a little bit better, but that's just my personal preference. I do get where you're coming from with that one. And yeah, Barbarian Barrel, I think that should have been nerfed too, but my point here with this intro was like, hey guys, let's be happy with what they gave us. People were calling hard for that 3 Musketeers nerf and that freeze nerf, and they finally delivered, and it's going to be really solid. I'm not sure what they're going to do with 3 Musketeers. It's going to be interesting, and we'll go into why in a little bit. But I'm just glad that they really listened to the community and they nerfed those 2 cards that the community was, basically complaining about for good reason for a long time. So tonight we're going to be taking a look at the most recent set of balance changes, and in the same fashion of my other balance change videos, let's go ahead and get started by watching the real quick Clash Royale official video on these balance changes, and then we'll break them down, based on the Reddit post and their official post there. Alright guys, we can see here, balance update coming tomorrow, well depending on when this is. Musketeers getting a 3% damage increase. 3 Musketeer, Elixir cost is going up 1, it now costs 10 Elixir. The freeze, area damage minus 6% and duration minus a second. Cannon Cart's getting a slight increase to his hit speed, or its hit speed. Knight, thank goodness, is getting buffed a little bit, an increase to hit points. Dark Goblin, much deserved reduction in hit speed. And Clone, they're calling it a buff, I guess, kind of. Clone now spawns behind the primary units rather than to the side. Alright guys, let's start by taking a look at the Musketeer damage increase. It's pretty much straightforward here. They're saying it's supposed to be a strong single target ranged attacker. Basically, she's able to destroy a few new cards. It says Baby Dragon, Inferno Dragon, Prince, a few other cards in fewer shots, 1 fewer shot essentially. I think that this is a great nerf for a couple of reasons. So let's look at it for 2 reasons. First of all, Musketeer, she's just not in a whole lot of decks right now. Like, other than 2.6 Hog Cycle, there's not a whole lot of decks that really run her, and she's not a super stable card in a lot of them. Whereas in, a card like Wizard or something, you can kind of just overlevel him and slap him in any deck as a support card. Ewiz also costs 4 Elixir, much more versatile for the inter-arena effect and the stun effect on every attack, all that good stuff. So she's not necessarily in the best spot, but I don't feel like she really needed a damage increase, but I'm glad that they did do it because it'll kind of allow her to shine a little bit more since there's so many different, replacements for her now. And let's talk about those 3 Musketeers next, because the Musketeer, that actually affects this. So keep in mind, the 3 Musketeers, yes, their Elixir cost is increased to 10. So they do cost 1 more Elixir, and that's very significant for a number of reasons. First of all, since we got that damage increase on the Musketeer, right? Now we have the each of those Musketeers and 3 Musketeers is going to be doing a little bit more damage. So even though it costs a little bit more, it does a little bit more damage. And they said it's been a balancing problem for a while. 3 Musketeers has been super strong since it came out. Like, I don't know when it came out, but it was like 3 years ago or something. I don't think it was an initial card on release, if I'm not mistaken, but if I am, somebody please feel free to correct me in the comments below. Anyway, it's been really strong for a really long time, and their answer to it has basically been, let's nerf all the cards around it. Let's nerf, Battle Ram, let's nerf Royal Ghost, just all these cards that kind of go with the 3 Musketeers, Elixir Pump. I think even Minion Horde got a nerf, I guess, kind of, when they changed the placement of the minions. So finally, they just nipped it in the bud and said, okay, we're going to nerf 3 Musketeers. And this has received a lot of backlash from the community. One thing that I really want to point out is, since it is sitting at costing 10 Elixir, this was an issue because a long time ago it did cost 10 Elixir, I believe. This is before I even played the game years ago. Since it costs 10 Elixir, you're sitting there at 10 Elixir, and, I mean, you're leaking now. You're leaking that Elixir. Like, you can't possibly place it where you're not going to leak at least like half an Elixir. And there's been a lot of really cool ideas out there on how to solve this, like raising the Elixir bar to 20 and just doubling the price of everything so that you can have like a half Elixir essentially, an increase, or having just straight up decimal points, just allowing us to have like 1.5 Elixir or 7.5 Elixir in hand, something like that. But anyway, regardless, unless they somehow fix this already, and we'll have to see how it goes down, then the 3 Musketeers are going to basically always be leaking Elixir every time you place them down. Another thing that I want to point out is that you can mirror them. I believe what I've heard, based on what I've been reading and seeing and hearing and all that, you can mirror them, and they're just going to cost 10 Elixir again. They're not going to be impossible to mirror at 11 Elixir or anything like that. I don't know, guys. People have been really lashing out about this, but I think it's kind of cool. Even if it completely kills 3 Musketeers, well then good. I mean, these guys have been, or these gals rather, have been rampant forever. It's been a major win condition for a long time. It's really hard to deal with, especially as a beginner player, if you're more of a beginner player. I consider myself kind of beginner intermediate, right? So, learning how to handle the 3 Musketeers and, defend against both lanes can be difficult for more beginner players. So, I'm pretty glad that they decided to finally just take care of it and just nerf 3 Musketeers. Hopefully it doesn't send them into oblivion so that you don't see them anymore. I do want to still see them in the game. I like seeing all the different archetypes viewable. But, I do hope that it kind of dethrones them a little bit. Alright, that's enough talking about the 3 Musketeers, even though it is a really important and hot topic here. Let's look at the freeze next. Like they said, freeze has been a top tier spell for 2 months. And it's got pretty good win rates. And ever since it got that rework, it's just been all over the place. So I feel like it's good that they're nerfing it. It'll bring some other, maybe we'll see more Graveyard Poison decks again, rather than just Graveyard Freeze all the time. I still think it's really good. I mean, 4 seconds of Freeze and, area damage that kills skeletons and spear goblins and, things like that. That's still pretty good. It'll still get a few extra swings from the Hog. Get you an extra swing from a Balloon, which is massive, right? And clear out all those swarm units, or on top of being zapped, clear them out. So I think it's still going to be pretty good. I think that what they're doing is they're just kind of like, they like where it's at as a concept, and they don't want to totally nerf it into oblivion, but they want to bring it so it's a little bit more balanced. So kind of like with the Barbarian Barrel, where they just kept buffing it and buffing it and buffing it until it finally found its place in the meta. I think that's what they're trying to do with Freeze, because if you've been playing in the last month or two, you know that Freeze is just everywhere. It is just absolutely everywhere. And I don't know, I'm just glad that they're nerfing it. I'm glad that they're taking care of it. Hopefully it's enough that it isn't super rampant anymore, but again, like I said, hopefully it's not enough that it's completely dead. We'll have to wait and see how the meta plays out to really see kind of where Freeze is going to be at in the future here. Alright, next, Cannon Cart. That's pretty cool. I'm really glad that they're buffing the Cannon Cart. As you can see over here, the Cannon Cart's actually been my flair on, what is this, Reddit, on the Clash Royale subreddit for a while here. I've been thinking about switching it to something else, but maybe I'll have to keep it as the Cannon Cart since it got this buff again. I don't know what's up with the Cannon Cart. Like, it was introduced, it was not that great, and then it replaced, like, the Cannon and 2.6 Hog, and it was seen here and there, and then it got buffed a few times, and then it was super strong and all over the place, and it was in a lot of different graveyard decks and things like that. So then they nerfed it just like a little bit, but that was enough to just make it pretty much fall off. You almost never see it anymore because there's just a lot of other options that cost 4 or 5 Elixir or so that are, just straight up better, honestly, more preferable. But now that it's going to attack a little bit faster, that'll give it a pretty significant increase into its DPS. So I think that it's pretty cool. I'm glad that they're doing that because I do like the card a lot. It's a pretty cool card, pretty fun concept, how it changes into a building, and you get some fun interactions after it dies, watching a giant or a balloon switch over to it when your opponent wasn't expecting that, things like that. So I'm glad that they did that. Hopefully it works out and it's strong enough to be in the meta. I don't think that that slight of an attack speed increase is going to make it super strong and OP, But, you know, maybe it is, because who knows, you know, like, look at what happened with Royal Hogs when they gave it that minor increase to its initial attack speed. That was enough to make them super meta for a little while. But if that's what happens with Cannon Cart, then maybe that's good. Switch it up for a little bit, since it's been kind of a dead card for a while. And, again, guys, this was another one. There's literally been, like, multiple memes on the subreddit about buffing Cannon Cart. So they finally did it. So let's be happy. They nerfed Freeze, they nerfed 3 Musketeers, they buffed that Cannon Cart. Let's be happy about what they did do, alright? Okay, next thing, Knight. I'm super happy about this one personally. I might need to make it my favorite card again. Let's see, which side is it on? It's over there, right? Yeah. So you can see me over there edited into the Knight's face, basically. It was my favorite card a year or so ago when I first started this channel, because it was really strong and had really high DPS, high attack speed. Just a great, really cheap card all around. I felt like it was kind of underappreciated. And then it was my first max level card, actually, because it was just really good on ladder, over leveled. And then they nerfed it a few times. They nerfed it really hard once, I think, and then they've slowly been buffing it here and there. This will bring it back up to a little bit of its former glory. The main thing now is it'll now take 3 P.E.K.K.A hits to kill a Knight. So I like it, guys. I'm so happy with it. I run Knight in a lot of decks, especially on ladder. If you guys have seen my Hog Lightning deck, or like my any of my Hog ladder decks, I'm almost always running Knight in that place of that mini tank. Valkyrie, I like Valkyrie, but my Knight was overleveled and my Valkyrie wasn't. Valkyrie's been a huge, really strong card for a while. She's been buffed and nerfed a little bit, and she's a great alternative to the Knight, but I'm glad that they're bringing the Knight kind of back into his spotlight. Hopefully he'll be really strong again, just for, you know, personal selfish reasons, right? Alright guys, Dark Goblin. Speaking of personal selfish reasons, I was waiting for them to buff Dark Goblin forever. When I made my alt account, I was like, alright, this is going to be the card that I overlevel. Because I just remember seeing people running a high level Dark Goblin and then logging it, and then the Dark Goblin doesn't die. Same thing with the Princess. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I just wasted my log, my 2 Elixir, on practically nothing, right? So I'm glad that they buffed it and they made him really strong. He has been a little bit too rampant, I'll admit. And I have him maxed out on my alt account. So I'm kind of sad that they're increasing his attack speed, giving him a slight nerf. But I'm also kind of happy, because I think that he has been in a lot of decks ever since he got that last buff. Like, they buffed him numerous times, and the last one just really sent him over the top. So he's going to be really strong, or he was really strong. So, you know, this will bring him back down a little bit. Hopefully, you know, you'll look at other alternatives. Maybe it'll bring the Princess back a little bit more, because she's been kind of weak for a while, or kind of underplayed for a while, since bait has been weak and everything. But we'll see how it goes. So I think that this is definitely although I'm not personally too happy about it like I am with the Knight, right? I think that it's definitely called for a nerf, and I'm glad that they did that. Alright guys, Clone. Oh man, I don't know about this one. Well, first of all, the changes to Clone are already live. Yeah, if you haven't noticed that yet, yes, they're already live. They're already in the game. So definitely, you know, if you're running Clone or if you're going up against Clone, keep that in mind. So the new Clone placement is clones are now placed behind the Clone troops. Let's see what they say. The animation of shifting left for Clone created some odd moments. Sometimes the Clone would get ahead of the original troop. Oh, cool. Now the Clone spell will always be putting the Clone troop behind the original, protecting it for better, more consistent attack strategies. So that's what they're going for, to protect it, right? They want the major, more high HP troops, the healthier, you know, troops with a bigger health pool to be in front, because the Clones just die instantly, right? But I don't know, guys. I have mixed feelings about this, because a major part of running Clone for me is running it in things that have like death damage, or that just do a bunch of damage initially, like a balloon. Like, super primary example, because there's both of those things. Lumberjack has death effect, right? And when the Lumberjack is cloned and it dies, the rage effect still goes off on the clone Lumberjack. So even though you're just losing your clone, you still have that rage effect. Same thing with a Golem or a Balloon. When they die, or a Giant Skeleton is a huge primary example for clone. When they die, they'll do the death damage in the Golem's case, and the clone will also do the death damage. The Giant Skeleton will drop his bomb, and the clone Giant Skeleton will also drop his bomb. Now, a go-to counter for clones is a light spell. You log it all, or you zap it all. Now, in the case of log, since everything is going to be behinds now, it gives you more opportunity as the opponent, the person with the log, to log everything at once. When they split to the side, you wouldn't necessarily be able to log everything at once because it was in a wider radius. On top of that, that death damage effect, that Golem dying, it's not going to necessarily be as reliable, because when you were able to split the two golems, the main golem and the clone would always go to the left. I know I'm pointing to my left, it's your right, so whatever, over here, whichever side you want to look at it. And the regular one would always go to the right. And you would basically be guaranteed that death damage. Same thing with the balloon or the giant skeleton. You'd be guaranteed that death damage because the bomb or the death damage would go off right next to the main one, the main non-cloned unit. And it would be right next to the tower already. Now it's going to be behind, and I've actually experienced this already. I've run the clone a few times already in my golem deck. And the stuff just dies a lot quicker, especially if they zap it or log it or something like that. It doesn't die a lot quicker, but it dies as quickly, essentially, to me it feels like. And you don't have that guaranteed death damage or double death effect because your towers, or your units rather, are not right next to your opponent's tower. Now the last reason that I think clone is not necessarily receiving a buff here, but more of a nerf, it's going to be a little bit harder to do that clone skip thing, where you're able to dodge your opponent's spell or attack or whatever it is, right? Because now the units, again, are going to be going behind rather than to the side. So it's a little bit more predictable. You're just going to log down the center and hit all the units rather than trying to figure out, okay, if they clone, the clone's going to go to the left. Do I want to hit the clone? Do I want the main thing? So I feel like it just gives you a little bit less room for that clone skip effect, personally, especially with units like walking forward into a spell rather than sideways and being moved out of the range of the spell, right? Because if the main golem is already, or the main set of units is already on the tower, and then the clone units go behind them, they're going to be moving forward. So if your opponent fireballs them, for example, it doesn't use a rolling thing like a log or barbarian barrel, but like an area of an effect thing, like a fireball or arrows, then your units are going to be walking into that area of effect because they're going to be going for the main one, and they'll know everything's going to go right in there, rather than maybe like, okay, I'm going to fireball slightly to the right or right in the center, but then when you clone at the last second, it splits your units off to the left and does that clone skip effect. So that's why, personally, for those like 3 reasons or so, I think that this isn't really a clone buff. I think that it's a tweak, and in a way it's a nerf. Situationally, definitely a buff, because if you do have units tanking in front and the other ones get up, then yeah, for sure. But just in the theory of clone really is used in decks with a lot of death damage stuff, like the lumberjack, like the golem, like the balloon, like the giant skeleton. So in those decks, in that kind of staple clone, just strategy, essentially, I feel like it's getting a slight nerf in that scenario. Now, we only got 6 balance changes in this particular set, but I think that these are 6 really good ones. I'm glad that they did them. They totally had room for 2 more. Maybe they should have done that barbarian barrel and that mortar. But again, guys, what I was going for is, let's be happy about all these really important things that they did address. They're doing monthly balance changes now, so things are going to shift and fluctuate, and you never know. With the change of the meta, certain cards are going to naturally become stronger because their counterparts, or their counters rather, are weakened, or the decks that include their counters are weakened by these interesting nerfs, or maybe because their alternatives are buffed, right? There's a lot of kind of intricate different interactions that go into what is super strong in the current meta. So let's give it a few days, if not weeks, to figure out how things are and how they shift with this newest set of balance changes. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a good night.